Hi, everyone, and welcome to Truth, Wisdom, Freedom Conversations. Thank you so much for joining me. And I have here with me Hazel Goodier. And Hazel is based in the UK, and I actually met Hazel a few months ago through a mutual friend, Visha. And we're here to talk a little bit about being more anchored, being more grounded as a conscious leader, how to adapt, especially during all of these changes. And what I really like about Hazel is that she's this embodiment of being a conscious leader as a small business owner, of making the shifts and changes that of perception in herself and then actioning them out into her actual business. So Hazel is the owner of this little restaurant called the Hideaway in Devon, and during the whole COVID situation, she's had to, do a lot of changes. And so let's talk a little bit about these changes that you've had to undergo. Yeah, welcome, Hazel.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess we could start with lockdown, maybe. I wasn't ready to open the cafe at all in March. I just wasn't psychologically ready or physically ready. And we opened for 2 days and then lockdown started. So that put a natural pause on it. And I know this is going to sound really controversial, but I loved lockdown. I had all my kids with me. I had their partners with me. The weather was incredible. It gave me space and time that no money could buy to be with the family. It also gave me some really valuable creative space to practice new recipes and menu ideas. So I went back to work about 6 weeks ago, 5-6 weeks ago, and I was ready. I felt like I'd had some really precious time. So I opened on my terms with my menu that I was prepared to put forward and felt relaxed with staffing levels that I felt happy with hours that I felt happy with. So when my customers, who were pathetically grateful to see us open because we were the only place in the whole town that was open and serving coffee and things, and we've got a beautiful view by the sea, was saying how terrible it was for me, I just couldn't agree with them. I couldn't say it. I said, actually, I've had an amazing time. And I routinely had customers say how terrible it was, and they felt so bad for me, and I must be in a terrible state. And actually, I felt blessed.
Right. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that perception shift. That's quite different.
No, I did, engage with the hype at the beginning, and I was looking at the numbers, and I was very scared of death because that's been a recurring theme in my life. And I did engage with that to begin with, and I constantly was aware of the numbers. And my aunt once said to me, because I used to be scared of flying, you can't hold on to fear for indefinite periods of time. You have to let go. Your body won't handle it, and it's just not sustainable.
Sure.
So I held on to that fear for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then I let it go. And in letting it go, I think it was a natural thing to do. I think if I hadn't had the period of fear, I wouldn't comprehend how other people are feeling. And I do comprehend. And sometimes I can empathize if I revisit that area, but actually I had to let it go. And once I let it go, I was ready to open the cafe. I wasn't worried. At the beginning, I was worried about how I would keep my staff safe and others safe.
Right.
Once I'd let go of the fear, it all kind of slotted into place. So I put a risk assessment together really quickly because I wasn't holding on to the fear. When I was holding on to the fear, nothing was safe enough. Nothing was hygienic enough,
Yeah, I remember that's when I met you, was during that time and during that transition.
Yeah.
I remember those first 2 to 3 weeks when we were working together, and there was, we were talking a lot about fear and embodying the fear, letting the fear pass through. And so it's amazing you come out on the other side and look, you're not dead. Amazing.
I know, but sometimes I'm fearful that I'm not fearful. It's like the protective mechanism.
Or, it's very understandable that, as a business owner, you do have staff to take care of. And I think at one point you were talking a lot about well, what are they going to do? And I'm, still having them on payroll. And so the business is constantly on output, but there's nothing coming in. And so for sure, there's a logical reason why one would perhaps be stressed, and perhaps that's what your customers were picking up on. But of course, on the other side,
they are really sensitive, and the financial aspect is a big one. But for some reason, I feel like if you've got enough, why would you want more? And if you want more, you need to reflect on that. And for me, that is food. For me, I have an issue with food, and if more, there is never enough, and blah blah blah. But for money, that isn't. I can understand that it is for many people, but I have a lot of teenage staff who don't have responsibilities, and I have probably the most highly qualified staff you will find in the world. I have a Cambridge medical student with a first-class degree. I have a mechanical engineer with a first-class degree. I have a number of teenagers that work with me that are very, very capable, and they don't have responsibility. So I was able to furlough the ones who do have responsibility, who have children and mortgages and so on. And that sort of relieved some of the stress of making sure they were okay. But the teenagers are so flexible and so understanding and so aware of other people's needs.
How did you help your staff members cope with the changes that that you as a business owner had to basically take care of?
Actually, I would say it was the other way around. They were the ones that helped me. They brought various systems that they'd experienced either at university or in other workplaces, and they brought them to me. We discussed them widely. We have a group, and obviously a Facebook group, and I put essential information on there, and we only share, so it's not a gossip group or anything. And I made it very clear that nobody had to come back to work. You only came back to work if you wanted to come back to work, and there was no issue if you didn't. And there were various responses to that. So some wanted to come back to work because the mental health side of things had really got to them and they needed social interaction. Others wanted to come back to work to occupy their time. They got a little bit bored. Some didn't want to come back to work because of their anxiety. Some didn't want to come back to work until they were guaranteed a certain number of shifts. So that was the financial implication. All of them were valid. All of them were valid. So I didn't want to bring back anybody that didn't want to be there. And I don't feel like that has happened. I think everybody that, and also because I have I've got 21 members of staff, I could spread the shifts across a number of teams, and we put them in bubbles so that if one person becomes ill, that whole team will be off for 2 weeks, just like it's operating in the rest of the world. And they're not all overexposed to customers or to other staff. So that's how we've tried. There's lots and lots of other things that we've done.
You've made a lot of changes. You've made a lot of adaptive changes to cope with the times, and also a lot of it has to do with taking care of the people and how they're feeling mentally and emotionally, and setting up your little Facebook group to check in with them. Because I also have heard stories of some businesses, and not to name any names, but locally where I am in Sydney, not necessarily checking in with people to see where they're at, and just kind of expecting people to just come back. And I think from the sounds of what you're saying,
because I've had that anxiety, I couldn't actually say to anyone who was feeling anxious, don't feel anxious, because I knew exactly how it felt. I know exactly how it feels. At the same time, I was ready, and to hold back, I did worry when I opened. I did think, am I doing a socially responsible thing here? Am I putting staff at risk, and will I ever forgive myself if one of them becomes ill? Am I putting customers at risk, and will I ever forgive myself for putting them at risk and becoming ill? But that's fear. We only operate outside, and you're more than 400 times less likely to contract the disease outside. And we're by the sea, so there's always a gentle wind. And the seating that we offer, we invite customers to seat themselves, and they are so socially responsible. We've never had to tell customers to move away from each other. No one wants to get this disease, but they are so grateful to be able to be outside enjoying a really nice coffee, because we serve really good coffee. And I can't tell you how many times I've been told by customers, this is the first coffee I've had in 4 months or something like that. It's recalibrated people's perceptions, and where once, because I only have locals, I don't have any, no one's allowed to travel yet.
Right.
So
right.
I only have locals, and these people used to get quite cross with me about having their freedom and their right. And they've totally recalibrated now, and they're so grateful.
Yeah, I mean, you have voices coming at you from all sides. You have your customers, you have to deal with, their expectations, you have staff members. So a lot of important decisions to make, a lot of difficult decisions. And you touched on anxiety. So I'm really interested in your process as a person, in how you came to look at the anxiety head on and the fear, and choose the decisions that you have made into where you are.
Yeah, so fear and anxiety used to be something that I would want to repress or avoid, and you actually taught me to see it as a friend, that it is my most useful tool, and it extends massively into the business, in that when in my personal life too, when you're anxious, it's really teaching you something. And in fact, the things that are the biggest decisions that are causing you the most anxiety and are most difficult are often the ones that are going to lead you to have an easier life. I don't know whether you want me to illustrate that.
Sure, yes. Talk us through.
So for example, some staff members, this is just a personal one, but some staff members are easier to work with than others. But I tend to be equal in providing shifts, because I think that you should. A difficult decision is to say some are more efficient and more economical in their time and should be offered more shifts, and that makes my life easier. It's a difficult decision to make, and it's a difficult conversation to have with the staff member about why you're doing it. But in the end, it makes that staff member work harder or acknowledge where their skills need improving at work, and then they end up with more shifts later on. So whilst it's a difficult conversation to have, and you feel ethically or the inequity of it at the time, it actually lends greater skills to the business and clears the air. I used to practice a bit of resentment. I used to go a bit huffy puffy at work and would just not give them shifts without explaining why, because it just made my life easier. So difficult decisions, anxieties, things that cause you a little bit of panic or fear are there to help you. And so whilst I don't enjoy them, I understand that they're now a friend, and they're usually there to help me.
And it seems
it depends on the
thing it seems like the one main thing that you're doing in that is to have open conversations instead of avoiding.
Communication is everything. Yeah.
Cool. Amazing.
Yeah.
What kind of practical tools are you doing to stay grounded? Because everything is changing every week, every month, every day, right? So
yeah. So I've increased the amount of yoga that I do in the morning, and I do my breath work every morning. I did become attached to it, and so I had a period where my son was he was 21, and he had some socially distanced friends, and we had a great time. I mean, I so appreciated the social side of it. It was so lovely, but I didn't practice. And I came back to it, and I became anxious that I hadn't practiced, and that I would lose all this security that I felt. And then I did a little bit of breath work, and the universe was saying, well, actually, you were extremely happy while you were having this partying time. That was your yoga. That was what you were supposed to have at that time. Let go. And obviously, I'm coming back to my practice and breath work, and that does really ground me. I do use meditation apps at night as well. During the day, if I feel the anxiety coming on, I acknowledge it. Sometimes I say, I can't actually process you now, but I promise I will. Like, as in, I make a note to myself to register what it is. So for example, sometimes I feel resentment towards work, and I think that I don't have enough playtime at work. Like, playtime for me is creating recipes and doing new things. So when I'm doing something at work and I feel this anxiety building up, I question myself, am I actually resenting myself right now because I'm not doing something I want, or the business or other people? Am I tired? And I try to analyze on various levels. And a couple of times I've come out going, but actually you're quite happy doing what you want, so just leave it. Don't be anxious. And so being aware, communicating your anxiety. So some things I shelve completely. If it becomes something in my mind and I'm at work, I'll just go to everyone, oh, this is bothering me right now. So for example, single-use stuff, obviously we're doing only takeaway. It's very hygienic, but it is so ecologically damaging and so upsetting. I hate it, but it is the safest method at the moment. So I say this to them. They say, well, why don't we recycle then? So we put our gloves on and we recycle everything. And it's still not great because I'd still rather not be using single use, but it's a halfway measure to feeling better about it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I couldn't have done that without them.
Yeah, lots of conscious negotiation here. And I love that, all leaders, if you're a business owner or, you're working in an organization with a team, you have a staff of 21 people, you've laid out, a very detailed process of what your day entails and how you process these difficult mental or emotional perceptions that might be coming into your field of awareness. And I think it's really important for people to establish a routine and a strategy in dealing with it. And so I love and appreciate so much, of all the sharing and that you're imparting, because it's very different as someone who coaches it and teaches it, to say, hey, this is what you need to do, versus someone who's actually experiencing it and like seeing the value and the benefits of that. And it's such a difference, isn't it? I mean, you're so different from when I met you. the way that you're
well, I think you need to take credit for that,
and you as well. I mean, the it's a co-creation, the participation in taking a lot of the meditative tools, the wisdom tools, to become more grounded. I mean, old you would have said, "Oh, I'm going to look at the anxiety and confront it, and I'm going to negotiate with it." And it's pretty amazing. Something we were talking about earlier was this other perception of survival for the business. And you were saying, oh, you guys are actually doing okay, and other people around you are saying, or have perhaps this unspoken idea that, oh, they're not going to do okay financially, right? Have you noticed how other businesses around you are choosing?
Well, that is always your definition of okay, isn't it?
Right.
If that's what I was going back to, if you feel like you've got enough and you feel like everyone around you's got enough, why would you want more? Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's a question about security. So yes, I mean, this climate is definitely harder for the small business, definitely. But I think there were product shortages. There were no food shortages during lockdown, but there were definite product shortages. And I think that may be a positive thing, because people then lent on the locality for the farmers, for the horticulturalists, for their needs. And some people are still doing that. And I think that if I can survive this, I will survive this. I will survive this. That people will want things that are local, that haven't been flown in, that haven't, got an ecological impact. I think that they will want those things. And I feel awful for people who are going to go under, and there will be loads of people that go under because and there are already unemployment spikes. But I think sometimes you have to just think month by month, which is what I am doing at the moment.
Yeah.
Because who saw this coming? Nobody saw this coming.
Right.
Nobody knows what the winter's going to bring. So I think your survival shouldn't be too primitive, but it shouldn't definitely, I would hold back on 5-yearly plans and things like that now.
Sure.
Just go with what you have now, and right now we are all okay financially.
Is that the
And
one
that's because
thing that you would kind of impart as advice to other small business owners out there who are feeling it right now? Like what's or
yeah, I think don't waste your fear on what is to come, because you have no control over that.
right.
We don't know what will happen. None of us put pandemic down on our business insurance. I mean, I'd like to meet someone who has put it down. I haven't met anybody yet, previous to February. So nobody saw this coming. We're none of us to blame, in some respects for what financial situation we're in. But just exist now, and right now is all that you have control over. And if you feel like you're okay right now, go with that. I know that the implications of losing staff and obviously, I'm not making money. I'm not making a huge profit, but I'm fine. And I think if you can look at that, and your staff are fine and you're okay, then obviously when that changes, then that could be painful. It could.
Yeah.
But right now I'm okay. So
Yeah.
and that's okay, because I define it as okay. I could be saying to you, normally at this time of year I make a massive profit, and I've got 3 children and I'm on my own and I've got my mortgage to pay. I could say those things to you. I choose not to.
Yeah. That takes a lot of courage, a massive change in our internal, values and committing to that. And I applaud you for that. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your process and what you've been going through, and leading your staff and your customers into a new chapter. I think we're in, which is and more chapters to come. So thank you for that. And is there anything else that you'd like to say on this topic of adapting and becoming more grounded as a conscious leader before we end?
I would say definitely sign up to one of Johnson's courses, because you can't. I think I could have been a different person right here, right now, without your help. I really do. I think, and I have been surprised at how lasting the benefits have been. It's really, really made a difference. It's been really great. So it's nice to be able to practice.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's all about community, right? At the end of the day, like what you were talking about with treating your staff members with the kindness and the respect that they deserve, and communicating with them. It's the same for anyone who is a leader. We need the community, and to bounce ideas and to talk and to be in rapport with others. We can't just operate as these little islands on our own.
I think they teach me more than I teach them.
Yeah. So yeah, I love these programs and these gatherings with other people, because it really is the community supporting each other, as much as there is of course a structure and a curriculum, right? But there is also the support of everyone taking care of each other, and that's really beautiful. So thank you for that. Cool.
Thank you, Johnson.
Well, thank you so much for tuning into Truth, Wisdom, Freedom Conversations. And if you are in the UK and you're watching this and you want to head down to the Hideaway for amazing coffee, please go over to Devon.
Super Saturday. They're calling it Super Saturday this weekend, when you can travel.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know when I'll be in the UK next, but yeah. Thank you so much. It's nice to see you on.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon, okay? All right. Thanks, Hazel. Bye.
Bye.